Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joanne Kamens, the Executive Director of Addgene, and all of my travel was canceled for the spring, as I'm sure is all of yours. And I'm really looking forward to spending this hour learning with you guys. I have an Addgene, Angela Abitua is monitoring the chat, and I should be able to see it also. So you're welcome to ask questions during the talk. And I've left plenty of time at the end for questions as well, so you might want to jot them down. In the remote format, it might be a little easier if we covered all the questions at the end. Okay, so I'm getting some messages that people can't hear. Are you sure that your mics are on? Testing again. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone still hear? Do a couple chats. Good. A couple people are saying they can hear. Okay, great. So if you can't hear in Zoom, there's a little button that says mute. Next to the mute button on the control bar, there's an arrow, and you might need to use that to figure out where your sound is coming from. Okay? Good. Okay, sounds like everybody can hear. If anyone's having problems hearing, we're recording this webinar and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel in the next week or so, hopefully just a few days. Okay. All right, we're going to get started. I'm sorry if some people are having sound trouble. We're going to do our best, and like I said, we'll post this after and you'll be able to hear it then on the recording almost for sure. Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. And as you know, we did a Twitter poll, some of you may know, to figure out what topic people wanted to hear from. And it wasn't a completely unanimous, but it sounded like people were interested in learning today about transitioning out of academia. Throughout the talk, we're going to be posting some links to blogs that I've written. There's no way I can cover this whole topic in an hour. So we're looking forward to your continuing education. You might have time in the next couple of weeks to spend some time on your professional development. So something to look forward to in a really tough time. As you all know, Addgene is closed for at least the last week, and we're working on some emergency provisions to be able to get things out to scientists that are able to work in their labs, especially those that are working on coronavirus. Quick shout out. It was hard to tell from your email addresses where you were signed up from, but there are a lot of Brodies on the line, so thanks for that. A lot of local support also, Northeastern, Boston University, my alma mater, Harvard Med, also Columbia and NYU and Jefferson, all places I have enjoyed visiting. I have not been to Cold Spring Harbor. There were quite a few people from there. I'm looking forward someday to getting invited, and also a lot of people from MD Anderson. So good to see that you are sharing links with one another and helping each other do some professional development. All right, so let's talk about some data. So this is the data, and it's a little bit hard to look at because it's a little bit shocking. But the dark lines are the dark blue line is the cumulative PhDs awarded, and the wavy line are the annual ones. And those orange lines are the actual faculty positions, tenure track faculty in the United States. And these data are a couple years old, but there's really not much of a change in this trend. And that is that there is no way that all of you are going to end up being tenure track academic professors. The good news is that's totally okay, because that is not the only thing that a scientist should or can be doing. I'm a big proponent of many, many diverse careers for scientists, as you will hear, for their happiness, for society, for productivity, for all the reasons. So, but it's pretty stark here. There is no way, even all of the best of you that would be good at academia will not get jobs in academia. Here's another view, a little bit more international. This is from the UK. Showing the different career paths starting from early career research into being a permanent staff professor. 0.45%, that little teeny tiny arrow on the bottom right. So there is no question that while you are training for your degree, you should absolutely be thinking about diverse careers and alternatives to academia. And I would say there are a number of national efforts going on focusing on this: better mentoring, better career development resources. I just had a question saying that it was not full screen. I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know how to do that. Swap displays. Hold on. I'm going to try and do that. Thanks for the comments. Sorry, we're working out the technical kinks here. Hold on one second. And thank you for your comment. Hopefully that is a better view of the slides now. Thanks to whoever posted the comment. Okay, great. Okay, great. So anyway, like I said, I'm actually excited about all the different careers that are opportunities for you, and I hope you will be as well. Great. So sorry, just figuring out. Okay, great. So here's really what bothers me, and things like Future of Research, the Future of Research Symposia, and the PD Hub, which is a nascent effort by a lot of people to try and create a better culture of mentoring in life sciences for careers in particular. But what you guys unfortunately see is a lot of this really negative language. This is from Nature fairly recently. It took a lot for Virginia to set aside the feeling that she was wasting her PhD. Wasting meaning she was going to pharma to do drug discovery. I don't think anybody today thinks that doing drug discovery in pharma is wasting your PhD. Sometimes the brightest stars in science decide to leave. Nature finds out where they go. Nobody can leave science just because you're not in academia. It's not the same things. Many group leaders see their star students quit the lab, pleasure that he or she has found a life they are happy with, tinged with regret that science will not benefit from the student's talent. Mentor fail. Leaving science can be a good career decision. Again, I do not pipette anymore. I haven't pipetted in about 10 years. I have never left science since I was like 9 years old. And finally, cheeky scientist, I don't like the rhetoric the other direction either. Illogical myths keeping talented PhDs stuck in academia. We need academia. We need to train the next generation. If you are good at a lot of the things that academia require, I would love to see more of you succeeding in academia as well. So all of this negative rhetoric is really implying that scientist is something that you just do and not something that you are. Science is a way of solving problems. It's a way of thinking that we need more of in the world. And you don't leave science. You always bring your science with you, no matter what actual job you are doing. So, okay, so this is my top 10 list. And I will say that these are actual questions that scientists ask me about being in academia. For the most part, they're kind of in the order of popularity. So we're going to start with number 10 and work our ways up to number 1. So at the same time, blogs that apply to these topics will be posted in the chat. And then when we post this on YouTube, all of the links and blogs hopefully will be associated with the video. So how is industry different from academia? Well, for one thing, you're always working on a team, sometimes a very big team, sub-teams, multiple teams. There's always a matrix of reporting and information and communication. Sometimes in academia, it's just you and the PI. I think more groups, bigger, science is getting bigger, there's more collaboration happening, but the image of the lone scientists working themselves every day still holds. Your data really are not yours, they're ours. And so that is a little hard for some people to get used to in real time, as in 5 minutes after you did the experiment, you're expected to share it. You still need strict documentation. You probably have more opportunities to speak and present. This is something you should focus on in academia if you want to be successful in any field, not just bench science outside of academia, but presentation and speaking for scientists is pretty common. Salaries are probably start higher and they can stay higher depending on the path. In general, depending on the size of your company, and we'll talk about that later, work hours are a little bit more reasonable. There's at certain stages of your career, if you're trying to have a more regular schedule, that's more possible than I believe it feels like it is in academia. The expectations are slightly different. But it's still, timelines are difficult. Other people are waiting, so there can be a lot of pressure. You know, these are just, again, these are anecdotal, not so much of a study, but things for you to think about. Okay, so the next thing is, how is industry not different from academia? So one of the delightful things about industry, or I would say non-academia, I don't want to imply industry like just pharma or just management consulting. I mean, all the million things that you can do. How is it outside academia not different? Really, you can be around a lot of cool people talking about science. You can pull on your science skills all the time. It doesn't matter whether you're in academia or outside academia. Your non-science skills can really help you. And we'll talk about what those plus skills are later on. You can still do fantastic science with amazing resources outside, in and inside academia, if you're lucky. So they're really, from a research perspective, there's not that much difference. If you have a career very different from research, then there can be more differences as far as the things that you are allowed and able to do, like spend more time on science communication, interact on policy, speak out about things like that. There can be more differences, but the basic framework of working outside academia doesn't mean that you're going to lose anything at all as far as being stimulated and being with other people who are interested in the cool things that you're interested in. Okay, so one of the questions I'm often asked is, should I go to pharma or biotech? And in the Boston area, that may not be an option in your area, but in the Boston area, that's a particularly prevalent question. And I don't really see this as a biotech versus pharma. I really see this as like a big versus small question. It can be a big law firm or a small law firm that you do IP law. It can be a big management consulting company. It can be a boutique management consulting company. It can be government big. It can be a small nonprofit that does NGO work. So big and small companies tend to have generally different characteristics as outlined in this table. And I'll mention a few of them. One is that in a big company, you tend to be a little bit more pigeonholed in what you are good at, responsible for, and learning, because your role is big but focused. In biotech and small companies, you have to really do everything. And for me, I've been in both. I spent 15 years in pharma and 4 years in a very fast-paced for-profit biotech. And Addgene is a nonprofit biotech, I would say. It was small when I came. It's now about 105 people. And you know, when I first got even to Addgene, I was still answering phones, empty the garbage, doing many different roles. You know, and the roles that I was hired for, which is to help manage people and all the other things. But when I was at my startup biotech, the for-profit one, I was writing press releases, doing business development. And in fact, it is my business development work there that made me really capable of coming and leading Addgene. So that's one of the biggest differences. So I would say that pharma hours, our large company hours, are a little bit more regulated. When you're at a startup, it can really be all hands on deck. When I started at RXI, I had 2 kids in middle school, and I got to say that was a little challenging. You know, there's a lot that you need to be doing there a lot of the time. And all the team is on board. It's super fun, super enthusiastic when everybody's trying to get things done. But it can be a little challenging. So that's a consideration. I think that biotechs are a little bit more likely to hire you. I'm going to rephrase that. I think that small companies, I really need to fix this slide. Small companies are more likely to hire you because they see your initiative, and the specific things on your resume might not matter as much. We're going to talk about this later. This is why knowing people is so important. When a company wants to hire you, they're going to overcome any of the limitations that you might see in your resume or your experience, or even if you have immigration status questions. When they want you, they're going to make that happen because they want you on their small team. And so interpersonal issues are really key in small companies. If you're 5 people and one of those people is really a jerk, that's not going to be a happy place to work. So you really have to be careful when you make that choice. It's definitely okay to move between big and small companies. I was one of the only people in my biotech that had ever worked in pharma. And my perspective as the buy side, if you will, in that case, as opposed to the sell side, which is biotech, was really valuable to the company. And they often asked me to look at the tone and the way that things were being communicated. So I think there's definitely advantage in moving between the large and small sectors in the life science career areas. All right, so the next question, why would you move out of academia? Well, maybe your strengths and interests don't align. Maybe you don't want to be training the next generation. Maybe you don't want to continue your science career doing basic research. This is one of the main things we vet at Addgene for the Addgenes that will be leaving the bench. We have a lot of scientists who do jobs at Addgene that don't include bench research or basic research or discovery research. And we really vet pretty carefully. We've only made a couple mistakes where people started here and then changed their mind, which is fine as well. But really, I think sometimes you really know. I really knew. I don't understand, to be honest with you, the angst of people saying, oh, I mean, I understand bad advisors who make you feel bad. I totally get that. But my advisor did not make me feel bad. In fact, he was super supportive. I came to him and I said, you know, hey, I think I want to get a job in pharma because I have this baby and I need more money because I don't have, my husband's still a student. We don't have money for daycare. He's like, sure, no problem. That's definitely what you should do. He totally got that I did not really belong following my career in academia. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of what it takes to make it. So once you leave academia, people change jobs a lot. It's not your last job. It's just your next job. And so you do have to, the first time it happens, you get laid off or your company goes under, it's a little scary. But in general, job mobility is part of being outside of academia. And that's certainly something that can be managed. And you can still have a very accomplished and exciting career. Again, leaving academia gives a more structured approach to your time management. So if you're the kind of person who likes checklists and people giving you timelines and depending on you and working in a team, that might be something that you might want to do. This is not to say that a good academic lab is not working collaboratively as a team. That's a huge benefit to the research when people work that way. But leaving academia, this is much more prevalent and more a given in the positions. Some people I know just want to be very close to the cures. They have relatives or personal reasons for wanting to be there. Academic work is before the cure. That basic research is super important. It is crucial for our scientific infrastructure to have basic discovery research going on. My point here is not to convince you to leave academia. It's to help you understand that there are some differences. Sometimes to keep working, you need to get a job that's not in academia. I don't want to see scientists that are trained dropping out of their careers. It's a bad investment. I mean, so much is invested by you. And if you have, government grants, by the grants in your training and your education, I would love to see you using your science wherever you are, wherever your life takes you. So those can be some good reasons. I see a question. Someone asked, do I view, Raghavendra asks if I view small company as more educational than a large company. It's not more, it's just different. Large companies have an enormous amount of educational opportunities, people to go to learn from and train, often coursework, different things that you can learn about. So in a large company, it's just like a slightly different way of learning. I learned a huge amount spending time in pharma, and I learned a huge amount doing biotech. So I wouldn't say that you can't develop your career in either a large or a small organization. Okay, so why would you stay in academia? Oh, wait, I have one question. I think I can see it. I mentioned telling my boss, James Quinn says, telling my boss about moving academia. When do you think is the best point to do this during an academic career trajectory? So this is my opinion, and I realize it is not going to work for all of you at this point in your careers, but I believe that the day that you enter the lab, you should have a conversation with your PI about the fact that you are considering diverse career opportunities, which might include academia and might not. If you are in a lab already, unless you have sort of evil mentor that you know is going to block any of your attempts, I understand that that's a different situation. And if you want to contact me after, I'm happy to work with you on that. But in general, I would say do not stop, do not wait, have that conversation as soon as you can. And moreover, I wish that all of you that chose labs, and I think at some point we'll post the links for how to choose a lab. I have some content on that, and also in the Addgene Science Careers book. I want you to choose mentors that are open-minded, and there are very easy ways to check this to see how good your mentor is going to be. To be honest with you, it doesn't really matter who you choose as your advisor from a subject perspective for your PhD or for your rotations. What matters is how good of a mentor that they are going to be. And a good mentor is going to be supportive of any career path that you are going to pursue at this point, because it is entirely unrealistic to expect 100% of you, you saw the data in the beginning of my talk, to end up as academic professors. And you need to keep doing science to be happy. And most of you need to keep doing science in order to feed your families. And at least that was the case in my situation. So I would say, do not hesitate, have that conversation immediately, as soon as possible, as soon as is reasonable. Okay, so why would you stay in academia? Well, if you really want to have a greater sense of autonomy and control over bench basic research, then I think, you know, and if you are a confirmed individualist and you know who you are, academia is probably for you. Leaving academia, as I mentioned, involves a lot of teamwork, a lot of responsibility to other people. And if you don't want that, that may not be your choice. I'm hoping if you stay in academia, and we need diverse, interesting, different types of scientists to do that, of all types and all, from all places, of all colors and all everything. I want you to be training and teaching the next generation of students and scientists. These students need to see themselves in their leaders and in their teachers and in their mentors. And so the more we can diversify our training environment, the better it will be for all of us. Maybe you really like the crazy ferment of academia. Maybe you like your time to be entirely unstructured. What I really think that it takes to be an academic researcher, especially in this day and age, is that you need to be an extreme self-starter and very good at self-promotion. And that, when I say self-starter, I mean, you do not have a boss, essentially. This creates an enormous number of problems in academia when it comes to harassment and diversity, but it really leads to a culture where in order to make it, you really need to be able to come up with the ideas, promote them, get the money, and really do that under all of your own motivation. I'm not saying that being motivated and having initiative is not required outside of academia, but expectations from a team are clear and more defined, and more people are watching. When you're in academia, no one's really watching but you. So it's really important to you to focus on your own motivations and think about the aspects of science that you like and what your strengths are, and see if they align with what you think is going to be needed for an academic career. Okay, so when should you move out of academia? This is a question I get all the time. Never, if you like it and see slide before, and this is what you want to do. If you're pretty sure that it's not for you, I really recommend the path of doing this immediately after graduate school. There's an iBiology talk on this subject by Shirley Tillman that I recommend. I did not do a postdoc. I did not suffer from that at all. I just had the advantage that I knew enough people and had enough direction during graduate school to be able to get that first job. The main reason why it's hard for people to get jobs right out of grad school is they have spent no time meeting people, developing relationships, figuring out what the job market looks like. You know, and so they have to do a postdoc because they just haven't done any of the things they need to get a job. So if you can do that work while you're in grad school and you know that you want to leave in a directed fashion, you can be extremely successful making that move right after you do your graduate work. I would say that if you've done 3 or 4 postdoc years, this whole thing of the double postdocs, 10 years, 12 years, and then starting to look for a job outside academia, that's a challenging path. And this is a little bit of hard news, so I'm going to try and be honest with you, because I think that is helpful for someone to be honest with you. When someone outside of academia looks at a resume where someone has spent upwards of 10 years being a postdoc, what they see is someone who did not succeed at academia and are disappointed in what they're applying for. It doesn't look like they're pursuing something that they want. When people hire you, they want you to want them. They don't want to be your disappointment. They don't want to be your backup plan. And it is very hard to justify that on a resume. It can be done, and you know, it certainly is a story that you can tell with your resume and be prepared. And if you network properly, you can find people that will give you opportunities. I'm not trying to discourage you entirely, but it is more of a challenge. So continuing to postdoc when that isn't the path that you believe you'll end up successful in or that you want, that can be a really big mistake. And so I hope you will think about stepping up your activities to get you move on earlier, and think about it. If you do decide to postdoc, but you already knew you didn't want to stay in academia, I recommend being very careful about choosing your lab. You can see my content on how to choose a lab for more information on that. Okay, so what can you do to get ready for transitioning outside of academia? And I'm going to go through a few slides that talk about this. Of course, you can be researching into the job market. I would say 6 months out from your job hunt at least, start posting your resume on job sites. Full disclosure, I'm an advisor for an organization called Scismic. The company Scismic is a skill-based job platform for life scientists. I highly recommend that you go to their site and check it out. The job descriptions there will also help you do this research. What do job requirements look like? What are employers looking for? You guys can all Google this. Google it. And you can find out what are employers looking for in the life sciences if you don't have a good career office that's supporting you. The other thing that you can do while you're in graduate school or a postdoc is work on your plus skills. And I do not call those soft skills anymore. I'm trying to erase that from my language. These are skills that are important no matter what career that you are doing, and they add to your career in any way. So there is no reason why you can't be working on these things while you are a student without seemingly sabotaging or detracting from your education. Graduate school and postdocs are training positions, and you should be training. So I'm going to go through these 4 categories sort of quickly, talking to you about, these are some of the categories of plus schools that I have found to be useful. Okay, so the first one is communication. Usually when I'm in a large room with a bunch of people, I ask people to raise their hand and say, how many of you have given a 1-hour talk in the last 6 months on your research? So there is a lot of public speaking. And if you answered no, that's really a challenge. That's really a challenge because, public speaking is so, and communicating your science and your work is such an important part of every career. And it's super important to, focus on that if you can. If you can teach classes while you're in grad school or postdoc, it's a great way to practice mentoring and teaching. Take workshops on this, join Toastmasters. We do most of science, unfortunately, and I feel guilty about this, that my native language is English. At Addgene, we speak about 30 different languages here, and we love that. But science is in English. If your English isn't great and you're on the job market, do what you can to improve it. Sit at a table where everybody's speaking English. Push yourself. Do more reading in English. Practice your presentation skills. Form a peer mentoring group so that you can present to each other and critique each other. I would write whenever you can, and find editors, secret editors that can look at your drafts and correct the English or the grammar if you're not a great writer, and practice writing. Being able to write quickly is a huge gift in science. Grants are so demanding if you're in academia, or if you're in startups writing SBIR grants, or nonprofits writing charitable grants. We have so much communication. I do a bi-weekly blog at Addgene, and I set a timer for 30 minutes, and I write for 30 minutes and I stop. No matter where I am, I publish it. I'm done. And so this type of speed writing with competence can really help you. It's sort of like this is going to date me, but when I was in high school, the only class that really meant anything to my life was learning to type. I learned to type on a typewriter with a ribbon. This was pre-computers. And I fought my parents because they made me take this typewriting class because I thought only secretaries were going to need to learn to type. Of course, being able to type 80 words a minute has been nothing but helpful in my whole life because computers came along and I was ready for that type of interaction. But it's similar to this. Being able to write quickly is just a skill that you can develop that is going to be useful to you forever. You can always be developing your technical knowledge, and you may want to become a thought leader, developing a technical niche. These are all kinds of suggestions on the slide that you can see about ways to learn the business, to understand the technical knowledge of the career you want to go to, of the technical field that you're in. and networking. All of these things are going to help you now, and they're going to help you later. So one of the ways that I got my job in biotech was that early on, in the middle of my career in pharma, RNAi was discovered. Of course, RNAi was always there. We just didn't know that that RNA we were running off the gel at the bottom was actually important and not just junk. And so this was, as you know, a watershed moment in science. RNA is important. And so that interest in RNA led me to really focus on that field when it first came out in the very beginning. And I started doing RNAi in immune cells very early, which was extremely unusual. And in fact, primary immune cells, which was even more unusual, sort of another story. But that expertise made me sort of, when I would go to conferences, other people wanted to hear about that. And it made me sort of a thought leader in the area of RNAi. And so when I left pharma to go to biotech, I was invited by RxI to come to be their director of research based on what they knew about my work already that had been public and at conferences working in RNAi, difficult RNAi challenges. So that's where your technical leadership can take you. It can actually give you job opportunities. And so, you know, also you might want to look up the Balsa group at Washington University. If I have anybody from the Balsa group online, kudos to you guys. These trainees, early career scientists, created their own consulting company. It's awesome. And they get to practice scientific consulting for their own tech transfer office and for other companies in the area, which is just like fantastic experience during their graduate training. And many schools have, universities have biotech clubs where similar things are going on. I think these are fantastic initiatives. What else can you do? So I have it on good authority, having spoken to many science managers outside of academia, that the one thing they find from people that they hire is that they do not know how to collaborate, communicate, and work in a team. And when they hire you, that's what they want to know. If there is anything you can put on your resume, any stories you can tell that can show the hiring managers that you know how to do this, that is an advantage to your interview process. Working on big projects implies incredible communication, collaboration, and teamwork. So I recommend that you make sure that you are finding ways to do this while you are training and be able to demonstrate it and have great stories about how you succeeded at this type of work. Also, managing people. So especially if you've done grad school and then a postdoc before you leave the academic career path, you're actually pretty advanced in your career. I'm not going to say old, but okay, you're pretty old for the workforce. And the expectation is actually going to be that you are ready to manage people. And if you didn't do any people management or even project management at all while you were, so I should take that back. All scientists do project management. They just maybe don't do it formally and don't realize they're doing it, but not all scientists do people management. And so learning about people management as much as you can, and in fact, hopefully practicing it a little bit with undergrads or interns or trainees or new people in the lab or mentoring, all kinds of things. These are all things that are really going to help with your career application, frankly, both inside and outside academia. Managing a lab is managing people. And if you're good at this, you can get the most out of your people and be much more productive. And finally, leadership and initiative. So I would say this is probably what we hire the most for at Addgene. We want people to really, we don't have enough people to like be telling everybody what to do every minute. We really need them to take initiative and do their jobs and do them well. And so we really try hard to choose people that have that spark of initiative. They see something, they want to fix it, they want to figure out how. You know, not everybody has to be a leader. You know, people that work, and that's a whole nother seminar on what those characteristics are. It's not the only thing, but having initiative to do your job well and lead in your role is really a big deal. So again, demonstrations of that on your resume and just the experience can give you the confidence to be a much better applicant for jobs. Okay, so this is, so what can you do to get ready? Do the best you can choosing your labs and mentors. If it's not too late, make sure that your advisors support diverse career paths. We've already posted the links to the How to Choose a Lab webinar and our blog that I wrote. There's a lot of links in there. There's a lot of things that you can ask to choose a lab that's better for you, that have nothing to do with the research topic and everything to do with what you're going to learn, how the advisor is going to mentor and support you, and what kind of opportunities you will have after. This is a huge thing. It's a thing that you can choose. So really spend time doing your research here. I want to admit I was completely lucky in choosing my lab from one criteria, and that I really was fascinated by the research. But after doing 3 rotations at Harvard, it was clear to me that it was the culture of the lab I was choosing and not the research field. I rotated in 3 great labs on 3 great topics, but really only the lab that I ended up in was the right one for me from a culture and learning perspective. Okay, question number 3. So this is an actual, again, surprisingly, a very common question. How do I not mess up in the interview? I actually meet a lot of scientists who have never had an actual interview, not in an academic setting, like with an employer that's not a university. And it can be a little different. And also you may go 6 years of your graduate work and not interview, while the rest of the world who's out of the workforce is practicing interviewing, getting rejected, getting used to that, getting jobs, getting used to that. And you really have not had that opportunity. You've been nose to the bench, really focused on that. So here are a few ways that you cannot tank in your interview. One is to use your research skills to research the employer. I don't have to tell you how to use the internet. The most important part here is really read the job description. You will not be able to do all of the things on the job description. If you can do half of them, that's great. But really be ready to answer questions about the role, why or why not you have the different qualifications and how you see those things. I already talked about practicing public speaking. Write an excellent talk. I have a blog on this topic also. Don't just share data. You want to present yourself as a thought leader. Think Keystone Keynote. Don't think lab meeting. We have a lot of content on the blog, not just my blog, but many on giving great talks and presentations. Practice interviewing. So interviewing is basically talking to strangers about yourself, and it's kind of scary, especially if you're introverted. I think that introverts are great at one-on-one conversation because they're good listeners. So I don't want to say anyone's better or worse at this, but it can be very unnerving. Having a whole day of interviews is basically an adrenaline, up and down adrenaline all day. So when you're really doing that is try meeting a few strangers and practicing that. That's what informational interviews are. They're not for jobs. They're just for practicing that conversation. And being able to, talk about your work, yourself, and ask questions in that kind of stressful situation, practicing it in a less stressful situation. Speaking of that adrenaline, I find that I ask people things in interviews sometimes, and they often want to tell me the next day they remember the story they wanted to tell. Interviews are unnerving for everyone. You're going to forget things. They're going to fly out of your head when you're sitting there, when you're tired toward the end of the day. So one of my favorite mentors, Sarah Cardozo Duncan, taught me, prepare your stories. So in fact, start preparing your stories now. Start a Google Doc or an Evernote folder or something where you just write down stories that happen to you. Believe me, you're going to forget stuff. I know this is hard to believe. I actually once was at a networking event and I met this person and we started talking. And after a few minutes, we said, you look really familiar. And the other person said, yeah, you look really familiar too. And then he said, I think we wrote a paper together. And I said, oh, really? And there we are on our phones looking up on ResearchGate. Sure enough, 25 years ago, we were co-authors on a paper. We had met in person maybe once. It was between 2 labs, but we remembered each other's names, but we didn't really remember. So you will forget things. So things that you learn, stories that demonstrate your learning, your accomplishments, even if something didn't go well, but what you learned from it, it's really worth it to write those down and practice them and have them at your fingertips when you're interviewing. People ask me, should I wear a suit? There is no reason not to. Maybe not a suit for certain types of technical jobs, but at least something that's presentable and professional. I understand the tie is out. My husband is a big 30-year tie wearer. He just stopped wearing his tie, but he still wears a button-down, a jacket, a suit to work every day. I think the reason for this is just that it shows that you've made an effort and you want to speak to the highest common denominator. Don't buy something that you wear only once for your interview. You're going to look uncomfortable. You're going to tug at it. It's going to be weird. You're not going to have the strings uncut that are supposed to be cut. So, you know, practice occasionally putting on professional clothing. And don't be late. I just, you know, practice your route the day before. Do not trust Google Maps or Uber to get you there. You know, make sure that you know how you're going to get there. Be early. Being late is just never good, especially for certain types of jobs that have timely requirements. Okay, so how can you meet people? So we're coming up, I have about 20 minutes left, so I am not going to give my whole networking talk. There are resources that you can find for that online, and perhaps I'll offer it later in this online series. But how do you meet people? You network. And we don't like to call it networking because it sounds like I meet you, you meet me, and then we never speak again, we exchange cards, and now we're done. What I like to call it is you need to build relationships. And this was a survey done of almost about 1,000 scientists. How did they find their current position? 52% it was through networking. Let's just say through relationships. So, but if you look at this, probably almost all these things are actually networking. So it's more like 85% of people find their jobs because they know somebody. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. One of them has what I like to do is called a crazy factor. So referrals is when someone knows you and they say, hey, I think Joanne's pretty good. Referrals don't get you the job, but they get you in the door, they get your resume seen. In our field, agencies like Scismic and like other recruiters, they can help you. So it's good. Again, you're considered quite advanced in your career when you have a PhD. So using recruiters is one good way. People do get jobs by direct contact. My second job, I was hired directly. And finally, that little tiny brown pie is just you answered a random ad. So it does happen, but it's much rarer. Now that's because people really like to know a little bit about the people they're hiring. So I once hired a technician who approximately 2 weeks after this person was hired, pulled a knife on someone in the lab because they borrowed their pipettes. I had to have him escorted out by security. So that's the crazy factor. You know, people might say, hey, I know Joanne, she's good at the bench, she talks a lot, but you know, she'll get stuff done for you. She's worth interviewing. Those sort of trusted recommendations mean your resume goes to the top of the 100 other resumes that have come in. Because when someone says that person, I've known them for a long time, there would be a good person to work with, it makes a huge difference. So, so I really, you know, want to tell you that it's really important to work on developing a network where people can refer you. The other reason to think about this is that many of the best and most interesting jobs for scientists are never advertised. So if you don't know people, you will never hear about them. Here's a little bit more about how relationships get you a job. You can look at this graph a little bit. It talks about how people are hired by the source type, by referrals, by career sites, by agencies, by job boards. And you can see that the number of applications that come in from the job board are huge, but much smaller percentage of those actually get taps. Where do they come? They come from referrals. That's where a lot of the people, you know, 7% of applicants come from referrals, but it's not a lot of the ones that they get. So, you know, this is very, it's a little bit hard to look at, but basically the bottom line in this data is that employers are really rely on referrals for jobs. So if I ask you what career paths do you know about, that might be drug discovery, tech transfer, management consulting, and then maybe you run out of steam. Maybe you know a little bit about government or policy, but there are so many different things you can do in science. I couldn't even possibly fit them really all on this slide. That's another reason why networking is so important, is hearing about all the diversity and the opportunities that come. It's really a limitless type of things that you could be doing. So as I mentioned before, my first job was a referral. My advisor knew, this was before the internet, so jobs were in the newspaper in those days. That's how, there was a whole section of the newspaper where jobs were listed, including in pharma and other organizations. My advisor knew people in pharma. I was lucky in that way. I didn't know that when I started in my lab. He was on the advisory board of Genetics Institute, one of the first biotechs around. And so he knew people in the field. He introduced me to 3 people. I had 3 interviews. I got 1 offer, and I worked there for 15 years. The second one was direct contact. I had lunch with a friend who was doing a startup, and he's the one who knew about my work in RNAi, and he pretty much said, you should come interview for our job. Never advertised. You know, we're interested in having you as director of research. So that was exciting. Same thing with Addgene, was both. Addgene's job was a recruiter only. It was not advertised. But I didn't know the founder of Addgene, one of the founders. I knew Melina Fan. She founded Addgene with Benji Chen and Ken Fan. And I knew Melina because I had given her an award on a stage at a Women in Science event where she was honored for her work. So, you know, and I also knew a lot of the board members as well. So that was sort of both referral and direct contact. So that's how I've gotten all of my jobs. I'm sure that's if I were to get another job, that's how it would happen too. Knowing people is super important. So I don't really have time to go into, again, my whole tips on networking, but you know, think about ways that you can work it into your schedule. This slide is covered in more detail in my Not Networking 101 talk. I suggest that you take a look at that. It tries to provide real tactics for meeting people, not just telling you need to do it, which I think is very frustrating. Scientists tell me that. They tell me I need to network, but how do I? So that talk has a lot of tips on how to actually do it. Finally, not finally, 2A, do I really have to be LinkedIn? The answer is yes, if you're leaving academia especially. And so here are a few tips, but I urge you to look up my blog that has some sort of out-of-the-box tips on you know, ways to use LinkedIn as a scientist. Don't bother connecting with strangers. Try not to click on the app. Because that sends an invitation that isn't customized. You really want to send a customized invitation and tell people why you're connecting with them. There are a lot of great ways to use LinkedIn, setting up informational interviews, connecting with alums and other people who are interested in supporting your career development. You don't have to go fully down this rabbit hole, but at least having a great profile is something you should have. Most important rule of networking, you don't have to network with people you don't like. And if it feels creepy, don't do it. So if you've emailed someone 6 times in the last 2 weeks to try and get their attention and they're ignoring you, that's a little creepy. So don't do that. A lot of people will say yes and support you. Those are the people you want to network with and look for. You don't need to network with people that are very senior. Networking with your peers are your future colleagues. So it's really just being open and interested in making relationships. Again, much more on this in my other webinar. Okay, so I'll pause for a moment for you to guess what the #1 question I am asked about getting a science job. And I guess this is a good time for a drum roll. Okay, so the #1 question that I am asked is, can I get you a job? Because I am speaking to all of you, and I'm usually giving this seminar in person. There is no way I can get all the hundreds of trainees and early career scientists that I speak to jobs in science. So I urge you to follow some of these major tips. Activate your network, meet people, keep it going. Be prepared to work at the bench first. That's what you know how to do. But if you start early in your graduate career, that doesn't have to be your choice. You can be prepared to do other things as well. Be careful about whining in your interviews. We interview a lot of people at Addgene who are pretty whiny about their academic careers. Nobody wants to work with people who whine. So you're going to have to find some positive thing in your science in order to talk about. Follow the money. So I follow a lot of industry newsletters like Fierce Biotech, Fierce Pharma. These are all online newsletters. Organizations that are getting money are often hiring, and those are good places to look for jobs. You guys are researchers. Getting a job is a research assignment. You know, I think that if you really focus on that and start including that in the things that you're researching while you are studying your technical scientific training, you'll be at an advantage. So I just wanted to say a few words about Addgene. I think everybody knows that Addgene accelerates research and discovery by improving access to both plasmids, viral vectors, and other materials. So please check out our website and our blog. We have all kinds of materials for scientists that use plasmids at neuroscience, viral vector, stem cells, anything that glows. We're the fluorescent protein central. Check us out. You may not realize I share these slides because people ask me often when I'm giving a webinar. This is our new shipping room. It's quiet this month, unfortunately, but we do a lot of shipping every day with a small number of very dedicated Addgenes. We have a huge resource of materials and information. Reproducible open science. This is the way to go. I hope you're all using tools like Protocols.io and Addgene and other bioRxiv and other tools for great reproducible, open, collaborative science. If you don't know about our viral vector service, check it out. This research stoppage will not be forever. It will end. And Addgene, maybe this is an unfortunate tagline for today, but we started shipping AAV and lentiviral vector samples with a lot of success to the community a few years ago, and this is becoming super popular. So join the sharing community. Maybe this is a good time to prepare a deposit. Even if you can't send us the DNA this month, if you're publishing a paper, get your plasmid information online so that you can complete the deposit when you're back at the bench. These are a lot of great reasons to deposit, but you know, over on the right of this slide, you can see the difference, your freezer versus our freezer. That's one of my favorite reasons. Make sure your materials are not lost and they're saved for posterity. While you're home, take advantage of our technical resources. We have tons and tons of stuff on the website. The Addgenes work so hard, and we have all kinds of guest bloggers and posters to create great learning material for scientists that use our materials. So we also are often hiring at Addgene. Check our career site. These are all science roles at Addgene, and only one of them, the very one at the bottom, is a bench position. So if this alone gives you the idea of the kind of cool work that you can be doing even in nonprofit science and still earning a living, enjoying your career, using your science every day, you know, really be open to that. This is just one example of one organization. Think about all the organizations, the different types of careers you can have. So the Addgenes are here. How can we help? We're a fantastically diverse place to work. I hope you also work in diverse and inclusive organizations. We are delighted to be here serving the community. And we have all of these social media ways that you can track us and our information and what we're up to. I'm happy to take some more questions. And I'm going to leave this slide up while I take a look at the question box, which I have to say I looked away for a few minutes because I was focusing on finishing on time. So question 1, thank you, Angela, for posting these. Can a postdoc, 2 years or less, be used as a transition period in the decision process to choose between industry or academia? Absolutely. A short postdoc, 2 to 3 years, where your goal at the end of that time is to have a job, which means you want to choose the postdoc carefully, and you want to be all the time during that postdoc working on professional networking, relationship building, and exploration. That is absolutely what I recommend for trainees that finish grad school and don't know what they want to do or have no connections and can't get a job other than sort of following the postdoc path. What's important there is choosing the postdoc carefully. How is it 3 years as a postdoc and a 1.5-year gap to take care of the family? I have a whole another, I have a lot of content on work-life negotiation. I don't call it balance because I think there is none. It is very hard to leave science for 1.5 years and come back. So it's possible. If it's possible for you to perhaps continue working part-time or volunteer work or do something to keep your skin in the game during a leave for a family, I recommend that. It's going to be hard to do an academic path that way, which is bad and should be changed. Believe me, I completely get that. But science moves really fast. And so if you can keep your hand in the game, even if it's just volunteering through a nonprofit organization a few hours a week, instead of really stepping completely out, I really recommend that. Addgene has a whole bunch of part-time Addgenes who do that. They're home with their families. And, you know, we love those flexible work arrangements, and they get to keep doing science even while they're also able to balance their family requirements at the same time. That's how I feel about, you know, taking a full gap. I think it's really hard just because science is moving so fast. Personal opinion. Not a judgment whatsoever. If you do decide to step back, the best thing you can do is keep your network going and think about all that time, how you're going to step back in and what different types of careers you might be suitable for. There are creative ways to manage this, and I think it can be done. Okay, do I have any tips for a postdoc over 4 years to find a pharma job? Meet people, meet people, meet people. Make sure that you're doing something that's applied to human basic research. Develop a skill or something that's very desirable to pharma, animal research, be really good at gene therapy type skills. That's very marketable right now. Data science, that's huge. Learn how to code a little bit. There's a lot of ways you can be attractive as a candidate, but it's mostly going to have to do with meeting people that are going to connect you to the job that you want. Okay, next question. Do I have tips on how to write a good resume suitable for industry? And what is the policy? We have a number of blogs on how to write a good resume, myself and other writers on the Addgene blog. Please look those up. Go to blog.addgene.org and just search for the word resume, and you'll get a lot of content on that. What is the policy for internationals without working sponsorship in Addgene and industries in general? Well, I don't have to tell anyone who has immigration requirement for sponsorship that it's pretty bad right now. This is just the current political climate is making it harder and harder. We really don't approve of that at Addgene. We want to be super international. Addgene has and does sponsor people. We don't think that's a big hurdle. We're willing to do it. The problem is they're just not always getting granted. The key, there is actually some great advice on the blog by some immigration lawyers. So I hate to keep plugging the blog, but there's just a really big answer that you need information. My piece of advice on this, or if you have immigration issues, make sure you have a really good lawyer. There's a lot of them who will give you an inexpensive hour or two, at least to consult, to get their advice, and get one that focuses on life scientists that can really, I'm happy to make a recommendation if you contact me. We use a firm called Cassius Law, Rachel Cassius, C-A-S-S-E-U-S. The other thing is that you need to really understand your immigration status well and explain it to employers. They don't always understand. And it's the same networking thing. If people want to hire you, they're going to help you work through the sponsorship issues. If they have 100 resumes and 90 of them don't require sponsorship, it's going to be much easier for them to pick one of those other ones. So it really has to do with knowing people that are doing this starting up and being the right candidate for them. Next question. In my experience, is there a difference between working at nonprofit versus for-profit? There doesn't have to be, but you know, a good company is a good company. It really has more to do with the culture, I would say. I really love nonprofit work. I've done a lot of nonprofit work, not for pay, and I really love working at a nonprofit as my actual career. So if that is your bent, there are a lot of fantastic opportunities in nonprofit work. It's a huge and diverse sector for scientists. So a lot of people only know about the for-profit paths, which are also fantastic. I have no complaints about any sectors of my career. I learned a huge amount. It's just a matter of finding the right position, not necessarily the right organization. I do know a lot of scientists who really consciously choose nonprofit work. I would be one of those probably now. Was not my first choice. I really wanted to do bench work, more bench work for a while. I really loved bench work and enjoyed it. And that can be done in nonprofit as well these days. So that's kind of a new thing. Great. Do you think we can still apply for jobs at the moment since everyone is working from home? Well, I'll tell you that Addgene is hiring people, is working on hiring through Zoom interviews. We're doing interview and co-op interviews right now through Zoom. I think people this week are very distracted and stressed out, but the longer this goes on, people will want to keep their work going. Addgene is still interviewing for our open positions. And we would consider hiring using good remote practices. We've done that in the past anyway, because it's expensive to fly out candidates from other places. So we often do interviews on Zoom. We are a very Zoom and remote conscious culture at Addgene. So I don't think you should stop. This might be the time when you have time to really dig into the internet at what's available. And it's a great time to reach out to people. Once the initial anxiety calms down, everyone's going to really enjoy that person-to-person contact. So maybe you want to get a personal Zoom account and do some informational interviews. Okay, next question. If you'd like to focus more on the science part of biotech and still do a lot of bench work, how much do you need to focus on learning the business side of it? Is it absolutely crucial? Yes, it is absolutely crucial. If you interview knowing the language of for-profit science, you're going to have a much better opportunity to get a job. Nobody in industry cares about your publications. This is a huge difference from academia. In academia, your product is knowledge in the form of shared information, which is publishing papers and going to conferences. This is hugely important for academia. In companies and for-profit, they're not interested in your papers. The worst thing I ever hear is a scientist telling me, I'm staying another year in my postdoc so I can finish a paper. I really hate to break it to you. Nobody cares about your papers outside of academia. They know you're still a scientist. They know how hard it is to publish. Put that thing on bioRxiv and start your job search. Get going. It does not help. So the more research you can do and learn about the for-profit side of science, so you know what phase 1 is, what's phase 2, what's the difference between research and discovery, what are the different roles in industry, that is really just going to help you sound more intelligent and more credible in your interviews. I recommend that you network with for-profit groups, like in Boston, in Massachusetts, it's Mass Bio. Most large sectors, and I don't know where you're all located, but all the large cities have a bio type organization, and those often have events that you can use to learn about the industry. So I cannot stress enough how much this will make you a better applicant for future jobs. Now, if you're interested in science communication, that wouldn't be the right research for you to do. So you have to figure out what the right research is. Next question from Megan. Would you recommend taking a non-academic internship during grad school, even if it delays graduation? Not delay graduation too much because life has to get going, but this is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to meet people, to see what it's like outside of academia. I highly recommend it. If you can do it and your PI will allow it, or if you have a program in your university, in your training program that allows this or promotes it, I strongly recommend it. MGH had a program like this where it wasn't a graded way, but it was like a 1 day a week kind of thing. We've had a few people from that program at Addgene doing science communication for us. They all got jobs, by the way, in science communication, so that's the good news. But there are hundreds of postdocs at Mass General. I mean, maybe even 1,000. And there were only 30 people that even applied to participate in the internship program. And mostly that was because they were required to get their PIs to sign off on it, and most of them were afraid to do that. Broke my heart. But those 30 postdocs that did it all had a fantastic experience. So if you can do this in any way, shape, or form, even taking a summer off and figuring it out yourself, I strongly recommend it. Okay. I think that's all for the questions. We're going to finish up now, and this will be available as a recording on the Addgene YouTube site, hopefully pretty quickly within a few days. And we'll be posting on social media. If you liked this webinar, let us know on social media, and we'll pick another topic for next week, and hopefully help you guys do some learning while you're home and perhaps not at the bench. Thanks very much. Bye, everybody.